Yeah, probably we need. Okay. We are in the ISPM webinar series. The ISPM stands for International Society for Participatory Mapping, and we are doing the webinar on indigenous people, participatory mapping by indigenous people, so mapping by and for indigenous peoples, with experiences from Africa, from Asia, and also Oceania. And this is the kind of the second webinar of ISPM, and we'll have the we have already 5 people to present here, 5 panelists from Africa, Asia, and also Oceania. And in this is from this webinar, we will ISPM like to kind of see how people can also exchange ideas, experiences, and also and also building up networks and so on. So this is kind of because ISPM or kind of community of practice among practitioners and also scholars on participatory mapping, throughout the world. And we are a new organization, and trying to build up, the membership from for people to join. So yes, we're also trying to invite people also to be members of ISPM, and you can register for membership to this website. So it's on Mighty Networks kind of platform usually. So it's more allowing people also to not only looking at the sites, but also allowing people to exchange and also having webinars and also courses on that platform. So that's why we are using that Mighty Network platform, if you are not familiar with it yet. So please be kind of apply for membership. It's mostly it's free. So it's you can sign up for membership. All right. So for today, we have Dave Devra from PAPID, Philippines Association for Intercultural Development, and also Hilary Ogina from Kenya Land Alliance from Kenya, and then Devi Anggraini from Perempuan Aman from Indonesia. It's kind of an organization for indigenous people, indigenous women, and also Dewi Sutejo from JKPP, the co-host of this webinar. JKPP stands for the Jaringan Kerja Pemetaan Partisipatif, so it's kind of the kind of organizations of membership-based organization on participatory mapping in Indonesia. And finally, we have also Boka Apiti from Aotearoa, New Zealand, from Digital Navigators, and he's been also working a lot on with Maori people and also in other parts of the world in terms of mapping indigenous lands. So with this, I'd like to kind of start with Dave Devra to kind of answering kind of basically 3 questions from what we know. And so what kind of how is the history of alienation for people there in the Philippines, and then what kind of methods that also very kind of popular in the Philippines. People use for in mapping their territories, especially indigenous peoples' territories, and also how effective that kind of the probably many of you already know, but IPRA, the Indigenous People Rights Act in the Philippines, that using has ancestral domains from certificate CATC, the certificate of ancestral domain claims, and also certificate for ancestral domain title. So, and how effective it is in defending indigenous people's land in the Philippines. Please, Dave, go ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Albertus, Dewi, Hillary, and all of the other mappers in here, I wish you a very good afternoon. 3 questions were given to me, and essentially the first one was an historical context of spatial dispossession of indigenous peoples in the country. Essentially, it all started in the Philippines when the Spaniards set foot in the Philippines. They declared, for a while, I have to silence the dog.
I think the dog juga want to be a speaker in the webinar.
The dog, now he's silent. Okay. Now, essentially, as I said earlier, dispossession in the Philippines went hand in hand with the colonials when they came in. No? When the Spaniards first set foot in the Philippines, they declared all lands that they saw as property of the king. They call this the Regalian Doctrine. So everything that they saw, they said, well, it's owned by the king. And we had no choice. No? And we had to abide by that. And they said that this becomes everything is owned by the king. Now, the Spanish colonists identified and mapped all of the islands that were to be part of what they called Las Islas Filipinas, or the islands of King Philip. That is why we became Filipinos, or subjects or children of King Philip. All lands that they saw were converted into haciendas. This is very similar to what they did in Mexico and other parts of indigenous lands in South America, with the purpose of keeping the natives in perpetual debt. Now, they do business, but the natives are in perpetual debt. No? Substantial areas were declared as friar lands, owned and controlled by the Catholic Church. No? They did surveys, but essentially just using sextants and using very, very primitive methods of measuring land. No? The problem with this one was that they erased all traditional land arrangements. No? When they landed in the Philippines, there were very, very strict arrangements of land governance, of ownership. These were all tradition-based, but they erased all of that when they said that they claim everything that they see in the name of the Spanish king. When the Americans came, the dispossession continued. No? The spatial dispossession even became worse. No? Because the Americans formalized titling. During the time of the Spaniards, well, the measurement of lands was just approximation, no? From that ridge to this river, maybe a bit of technical data using a sextant, but essentially it was very, very simple. When the Americans came in, they wanted to be more precise, no? They established the Philippine Commission, and they enacted the first Philippine Land Registration Law, which is the Philippine Commission Act of 496. And they created the Court of Land Registration and the first office of the Register of Deeds. Now we're starting to have problems. Now. They want everything in paper. They want everything to be precise. They want it to be registered, every nook and cranny of the country. In fact, just 6 years after that, they did the first cadastral survey somewhere near where I come from. This was led by an American surveyor called William Tipton. And then after that, they established the first school of surveying in Manila. It is the Manila High School in 1908 to train Filipino surveyors. After that, mapping became the exclusive domain of licensed geodetic engineers and started professionalizing the practice of mapping. Participatory mapping, community mapping, all traditional forms of measurement of land were considered primitive and had no science behind it, hence unacceptable for any transaction. Now mapping became exclusive to licensed geodetic engineers. They were professionals. Today, it's even worse, no? Because we carried on all of those bad practices. We removed the king. Now the king is the government. No? In 2000, about 10 years ago, our parliament enacted Republic Act 8439, or the Magna Carta for scientists, engineers, researchers, and other science and technology personnel in government. Now, what is the problem with this? The problem was this law strictly defined the discipline and exercise of mapping as including the use of any measuring device and the production of geographic maps. Anything when you use a ruler, a tape measure, and you establish metes and bounds and make a map, this is illegal because it can only be done by a licensed geodetic engineer that is allowed by the Professional Regulation Commission. The act of making maps, if you are not a licensed engineer, became criminalized. In fact, it had penal provisions and had penalties for the unofficial conduct of surveys by non-licensed mappers. And I've been mapping for the past 30 years. I am still waiting for that subpoena or warrant of arrest because I think the only way to resolve this is to the courts. No? Because this law is so wide, it's so broad, it hits everything. What if you're a researcher making maps? What if you're a community leader? Then you are to be penalized. So in reality, they have had a lot of difficulty in implementing this law because then everybody is a criminal. Now, what are the mapping methods that are available that are being used in the Philippines? No? We're still using traditional survey, using transit and chain. But of course, because of new changes, it has developed further into using survey grade GPS, the RTK real-time kinematic GPS, a lot of the total stations, etc. But what is important to understand in the Philippines is that for titling of ancestral domains, I think this is something very important. I mentioned this a long time ago in a meeting organized by a man that do not get carried away by the requirements of government because it will really be a mess. No? In the Philippines, we just wanted it to go on fast, just to have the indigenous land surveyed. And then they required survey grade sub-centimeter accuracy, which is very expensive, very difficult, and impractical for huge ancestral domains. How in the world do you do sub-centimeter mapping for areas that are huge? Another problem that it creates is that many of the boundaries of indigenous communities are negotiated boundaries that were established through time and experience, historical, like ridges, rivers. It had to be big, no? Because people understood that you cannot come up with a sub-centimeter point because that is not a reality in the world, no? But then again, now government for any title, for titling, they require sub-centimeter accuracy. They put markers. And it's very, very difficult to do. It's very expensive and it creates conflict. Because sub-centimeter accuracy will really create conflict because this is not similar to what the communities are used to. For determining land uses, our government is a bit more open. No? They allow resource grade surveys, meaning the ordinary handheld GPS with at least plus minus 7 circular error probable, 7 meters. No? So that is allowable. No? What are the other emergent mapping methods? So of course, we use a lot of 3D modeling. We use remote sensing, so many. But the basic ones that are used for titling of ancestral domains are these ones that I mentioned, which is basically sub-centimeter accuracy survey grade mapping. Now, on a question on the certificate of ancestral domain title for everybody, as Alberto said earlier, we have a law that allows indigenous peoples to file claims for ancestral domain titles. No? What is covered by the ancestral domain titles? Everything that the people can generate evidence to prove that it is theirs. No? The certificate of ancestral domain title provides. Now, why is it important? Why does it protect the people? It is not perfect, but at least there's something they can hold on. The certificate of ancestral domain title provides for the process of the identification, mapping, and delineation of ancestral domain. It lays out a clear process on how you will map it, how you will document it, how to generate evidences, and most importantly, when doing the determination of the boundaries, in the law it says that what will be followed is the principle of self-delineation, where the IPs, where the indigenous peoples define the extents and types of boundaries their ancestral domain has. No? People that says from this range to that range, they negotiate. No? Of course, they don't. There are chances they will not get it because in reality, some titles of private individuals would be there. In reality, there will be plantations. But at least the initiative to show where your land is comes from the principle of self-delineation. The government has no right to say, this is where you are, but it is the people that define where they are. No?
Okay. Can you
Problems start when the boundaries that the community defined are now translated into survey grade maps. Now that becomes difficult. Now there's a problem with that. What else? Why is the certificate of ancestral domain title important? It empowers indigenous peoples to negotiate with other interest groups in government. You have something to hold on because you have a clear basis to assert governance and authority over the use, exploitation, and treatment of all resources within their area. Now, when the maps that they have, they say, we have a title over this. This is where we assert our authority. These areas are sacred. You cannot go there. There is something physical that they can hold on. So it's very important. The participatory ways of mapping is very important because as much as possible, we name all areas in the map using traditional place names. We recreate what is in the mind of the communities as an accurate picture of their own reality. Because otherwise, because now many of our maps have changed the names of the creeks, the ridges, we have to return that, no? Because it gives the strength to the people.
Excuse me, Dave,
yes?
Please, could you kind of wrap up? So, we need to other people.
Okay, I'm on my last slide. For the certificate of ancestral domain, it also provides ownership, not only for the land, but also for the waters. It ensures sustainability of culture because people who have land can freely practice tradition in territory. Now, lastly, what are the other mapping methods? No? We still use sketch maps because this is where we start when we file claims. It's in the law that the community starts with the sketch map. What else? No, lately, participatory mappers in the Philippines have been using consumer drones to conduct photogrammetric mapping to expedite the mapping process. We've also used a lot of imagery in defining territories, and lately, the government wants to use Google Earth to identify at least the extent of ancestral domains for those who have yet to file claims. Also, lastly, with so many Chinese cheap smartphones, many of the youth are using smartphones to provide geospatial information on land disturbances, migration, etc., in their ancestral domains. So that's all.
Okay, thank you, Dave. For the the explanation about what's going on in the Philippines in terms of mapping indigenous lands. So next, I like to invite Hilary Ogina from the Kenya Land Alliance to kind of explain about the kind of the experience in the Kenya in terms of the historical roots, and also like the one that kind of Devra also already mentioned, and also what kind of methods that are used in the Kenya for your activities. And finally, kind of I like to also to ask you about how effective is that the mapping of indigenous peoples land in struggle of indigenous peoples in Kenya. And also I know that I learned that in the 2016 there's a Community Land Act already kind of enacted, and how it is affecting the struggle of indigenous peoples in defending their lands. Yeah,
Oh,
please.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you well.
So my name is Jaringan. I'm a land Kenya and communication expert from Kenya. I work with an organization called Kenya Land Alliance, and it's a privilege to be here just join such a rich group of people sharing their experiences on land. And I'm very happy to hear the experience from Spain and how that has impacted the indigenous peoples. Kenya is also a unique country that has got unique land issues. And indeed, historically, like is in many countries, because of a colonial legacy, indigenous rights and the rights of the Africans and the indigenous people were not given equal standing in law as other land holdings, because land is classified into three categories in Kenya: private, public, and communal. But then private land was given a higher pedestal in law only up until the year 2010, when Kenya enacted a new constitution. That then this new constitution gave all three categories of land equal standing, both constitutionally and before the law, because then such lands did not enjoy that protection, and that led to this disenfranchisement of indigenous communities and indeed local communities by the colonial class who used the law to their advantage. So the 2010 constitution put into place a law that takes care of people that own land community. The concept of the commons, which is a cross-cutting concept globally in Asia and indeed in Africa. So this, after the year 2010, it was only in the year 2016, as Albert said, that a law was passed, and in the year 2016, that protects community land rights. Please note that most indigenous communities occur on such lands, and that is their dominant land owning regime, whereby land is owned through a complex structure of communal ownership that is shared both individually, and they've got public spaces within community land, and then the bulk of such lands is communally owned. So that would be the experience. As Kenya Land Alliance, an organization that deals with the empowerment of local and indigenous communities, we also use indigenous mapping as one of the strategies that can allow the communities to assert their rights over their lands and their territory. Because when the law was still dragging in terms of putting in place structures to protect such communities, and the communities mainstreamed technology as one of the means through which they can assert their claims over their land. So participatory mapping was one of the methods that was used in the coastal part of Kenya, in a county called Kwale, where there's one of the largest sands mining by a multinational known as Base Kenya. Then in the northern part of Kenya, where there's oil and gas, where there's also a multinational known as Talo Oil. So coincidentally, such communities have got manifestations of indigenous communities that live in these areas, but then their rights were disregarded. So then they used the maps as a means of asserting their lands, and KLA assisted them to assert their lands over their rights over territories with very good results. So the Community Land Act is being implemented, but then the process of implementing the act has been quite slow. When the act is still being implemented progressively, the communities have taken a proactive approach to ensure that their rights are asserted, even as they anticipate the act to be brought into place. So that is what I would say about Kenya in a nutshell. And I'm very happy to be here and to respond to any questions and to share more experiences about how the Kenyan communities have been able to gain success through participatory mapping. Probably as I finish, I would also say that as a matter of learning, we were also able to collaborate with the University of the Amazon, where indigenous communities from Brazil came to Kenya to share their experiences on how effectively the traditional communities living in the Amazon were able to assert their rights and also to gain success stories. In Kenya, there's a community known as the Endorois community that have got a world precedent setting ruling that was given by the African Commission on Peoples and Human Rights. You can look at it online and you'll see that such a community was able to assert their land over their ancestral land, which is community. Thank you very much for listening.
Okay. Thank you, Hilary, for kind of your presentation. So, it can be very interesting to see, hear the experience from Kenya. So, yeah, I'd like to hear more from the people to respond. All right. Next, I'd like to invite Devi Anggraini, the president of the Perempuan Aman, the Indigenous women organization in Indonesia, and that already are working a lot on starting using participatory mapping to empower indigenous women in Indonesia. So I would like to hear more about the stories about this empowerment process, empowerment effort through participatory mapping. So please, Debbie, please explain it in 5 minutes. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Bang Monty. For us is in a Perempuan Aman, we have an Indigenous Women Association in the archipelago in Indonesia. We had member 2,787 members, and using local chapter to consolidate them, we had 65 local chapter now. And this is a good opportunity for us to share our experience. It's not easy for indigenous women organization, even it's not a part of the organization formally, but as an indigenous woman, how we can bring our perspective and interest talking about the ancestral domain. It's so really limited data talking about indigenous woman perspective and interest. That's why the first when I be president of Perempuan Aman, I'm thinking a lot about this situation, how we can consolidate indigenous women, but in the same time we empower them, build their capacity to know and to be part of the movement of indigenous women, even in Indonesia. This is so really important for us. We know discrimination, patriarchal is still hanging in a indigenous woman movement. We are using participatory mapping, or we call engendering participatory mapping, is a part of our strategy and a tools for us to consolidate indigenous women. And then this is like it's not just how we can get the data, spatial data and qualitative data, but this is talking about the protect our ancestral domain. For Perempuan Aman, we are using engendering participatory mapping to reflect, to build to give the space for reflection for indigenous women and deconstruction indigenous woman political identity, And we are using indigenous woman, how we call management area is in the ancestral domain, knowledge of indigenous women, and authority how to manage the natural resources in the ancestral domain. Simultaneously, perempuan aman using engineering to build capacity of indigenous women and provide disaggregated data to mainstreaming indigenous women perspective and interest over territory. After 5 years, we are using this engineering participatory mapping. Is so really like surprisingly for me and our organization. ISPM is like tools to build indigenous women critical analysis about indigenous women roles and social responsibility in community. This is talking about how they can look at the power relation. It's not just talking about the property in the related to the land, but this is more deeper about the situation. This is like a reflect how they can using space in the community. If this is the patriarchal, they try to identify how they can influence the who is to be decision maker, know about their interest and perspective about the indigenous women management area in the territory. This is like using the data and then they bringing as a formal negotiation with the others. I think this is a part of we look at after 5 years. And the other one is we build capacity of indigenous women to be more visible in the public space. Because the data is already build their confidence to talk with the stakeholders and the government, and they can prove and they already have now you call it planning. Yeah, this is like how the initiative that provided by indigenous women facing the risk and change. They look at intergenerational after they are using the engineering participatory mapping as a tools. And for us is we look at the leadership of indigenous women build what you call is a rising because if you look at the success story from indigenous women initiative, they can securing the ancestral domain using the data, segregated data, and activities like collective gardens and others. There is two of indigenous community get recognition from the village administration government. I think this is purely initiative from indigenous women. When they start with this initiative, a lot of people really skeptic with this initiative, but they just because they don't have formal education background and what are you doing with the data? Can you do that? And so really skeptic. But now we can see after the later recognition from the village government. I think this is a good experience for indigenous women. That's why they are built their confidence, and now we can see the full and effective participation of indigenous women using the data, using talking about the ancestral domain is not just talking about the dominant by men, but is a part of the women's discussion, debating, and they are really a part of the how build the decision making processes. And I think this is a good for us is Perempuan Aman using the data to promote indigenous women collective rights. Talking in Indonesia, there is no policies protect indigenous women collective rights. We just have one regulation to protect indigenous. No, I'm so sorry. Women's rights as an individual, but not for collective rights as indigenous women. This is related to how we can recognize and protect indigenous women knowledge to manage natural resources. I think this is a part of the what you call, this is like a part of the indigenous women collective initiative. Is not individual. And if we look at more than that, we can see the indigenous woman visibility rising in the public space in Indonesia, such as mainstream media now using indigenous woman terminology is really understand now what the different indigenous woman with other women's. It's so really happy to hear that. And the last success using this data and for Perempuan Aman, if we look at the concluding observation of a shadow committee for Indonesia government, they recommend is so really specifically talking about the indigenous women. If you look at the shadow article, they just put a rural woman, but now specifically they recommend about the indigenous woman rights. I think this is a good how we can use and practicing the engendering participatory mapping. We know it's not just for the woman, but for us is if we look at the whole initiative, this is talking about the how to consolidate community by groups. Yeah, it's not just a man, but or other institution, but this is talking about the with the whole groups in the community. I think this is a good practicing to using this participatory mapping and combined with the feminist approach in this initiative. Thank you, Bang Monty. Back to you.
Okay, thank you, Devi, for kind of, it's very interesting, and kind of I think it's a kind of a lot of people are like to know more about it, and it's kind of see, because it's very interesting how indigenous women are also kind of taking part actively in this endeavor. So yeah, so hopefully that people are kind of have good questions on this. And next, I'd like to go to Moka Apiti from Aotearoa, New Zealand. New Zealand. So it's kind of I like to have kind of, yeah, like others also bit on under kind of historical context of the kind of alienation of Maori people from their lands, and also what kind of methods that are used in there, and also how it's kind of that why probably people are understanding that Maori people has a kind of a treaty called Waitangi Treaty that that really kind of set the the background of this process, and also they have a Waitangi Tribunal. So how how this tribunal is really kind of affecting the struggle of Maori people there in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Thank you. Please.
Kia ora, Monty. Kia ora koutou. As you say, we're Aotearoa, land of the long white cloud. New Zealand is part of the what's defined as the Polynesian Triangle, which comes from New Zealand across to Rapa Nui or Easter Island through to Hawaii. And so collectively, when we talk about it and you think about the story Maui and the navigation story, those stories we originally over 1,000 years ago, we were in Samoa, and our our communities traveled across the islands, and the last place they came to was here, was New Zealand. And so we've taken those oral traditions and we've kept those traditions since that time to now. And so when we talk about your participatory mapping, that's actually something that we do effectively all the time. It's part of the community in terms of songs and narratives, in terms of when we're laying out a story, we're thinking about it 3D. We're thinking about everything around, we don't ask you your name, we ask you where are you from. And then when we say where you're from, we try and find out what the connection between families, and then we become one. And so it's a kind of a technique that we've taken on board, and we've maintained. But in saying that, if I tried to timeline what we're talking about here, I'd say in 1769 was when Captain Cook came to New Zealand, and then influenced. And if you could think of New Zealand at that time, right up until 1840, as a mini Europe. And we're still like that, tribal nations. So even though we're defined as Māori, we all have our own individual tribes with them where we're from. And so we still establish that. So my father's tribes are from the West Coast, my mother's tribes are from the East Coast. And still hold quite strong competitive natures around how that was. And I think the Crown and the government used that effectively through some of the process to make us fight each other, to make us lose our connections, and we're building that over time. So if we thought about in 1835, there was a Declaration of Independence that was signed by a number of our tribes that basically said, this is the declaration, this is Aotea, this is New Tiriti, this is New Zealand, this is us as our own sovereign nation. And we're a sovereign nation. But by 1840, the British monarchy came in, and we became part of the Commonwealth through what was defined as the Treaty of Waitangi. And that's we pretty much today we call that the founding document. And it's caused a lot of contention, but it's also the principle of the document that was signed by there was two versions, one that was Māori, one that was English. And the Māori version was signed by pretty much all of the tribes. The English version, not so much. So, but pretty much it said, the Māori version is that we'll keep our sovereignty, our ownership of our lands, our waters, and all of our possessions. The English version basically said we'll cede sovereignty to the English monarchy, to the government. And then effectively from that point, when we talk about that, then as you say, this spatial this alienation process started to happen. That way we started to push back on the government from 1845. So from 1845 to 1875, there was a series of land wars. And for my father's people of Waikato, we lost over a million hectares of our land was taken. My father's people were dispossessed and moved off their lands. And so this process that pretty much went up to the 1970s of dispossession, of imprisonment, of confiscation of lands, of the removal of your land rights, of your language, not to be able to speak your language. This happened right through. Fortunately for our elders of the time, they just kept fighting it. They kept referring back to this thing called the Treaty of Waitangi, which was pretty much mothballed and put into a closet, and everyone at the time said, that's something in the past. But our Māori communities really strongly believed in this founding document that's put the English or the Crown and Māori together in terms of this relationship. And so we call that, this relationship which bind us, and was talking about the protection for all people within New Zealand as the founding document. So by 1974, 1975, there was the establishment of this thing called the Waitangi Tribunal. And what it meant to do was it's a commission of inquiry. So it's there to basically review the past enactions of injustices done by the Crown, and they extended it back to 1840. So a number of tribes signed this document. So this review from the Waitangi Tribunal is to basically look at all the injustices that have been done to our people over that time, and then provide a series of recommendations to the government of the day from that point, and then basically try to hold the government to account And so what they're saying to them is, look, you basically you alienated, you fought these people, you removed them from their lands, you dispossessioned of their language, their culture, and you pretty much try to extinguish them. And through that, we think you need to, we believe that's an injustice and you need to right those wrongs. And so what the Waitangi Tribunal does is it tries to work out who is the person, who's the claimant, who's the one that's had this, what we call mamai, or this breach, or had this pain that's inflicted on them, which community. So we use a lot of the spatial mapping and a lot of the participatory mapping to basically depict the evidence, the evidential base. So, you know, we're talking from our stories of 1,000 years ago, and we're able to map those stories and saying, even though your attempts of basically trying to wipe us off the landscape, we're still here today. And this is where, and as an example, there's only 5% of land in New Zealand that's still customary owned. So we don't have, in many places around the world, they have reserves or reservations. We pretty much live in cities with everyone else, but we're dispossessed of our lands. And so 5%, that's 1.3 million hectares, is still in Māori ownership. And so what we have to do is we have to use different tools to hold the government to account, to basically force them to negotiate. So the process, what the Waitangi Tribunal does is tries to understand as a commission of inquiry to find out what the breach is, what the wrong is, and then make recommendations to the government. And then what we do is have to then talk through, similar to what Dave talked about, is create different types of mapping techniques to depict the evidence and the research, and then look at negotiating with the government to say, you need to right these wrongs. And so there's a settlement process, there's a process defining boundaries, there's a process around, you know, who's the right people, who's not, all those things, all the contestable issues. And what we look at doing is we use Google Earth quite a lot, where we overlay, we'll do participatory mapping techniques with communities, from young children to, you know, you sit there and you'll just do days and days, what we call wānanga and talks, and capturing all the stories and context, and then we visualize it. And then we basically will sit in a room with government officials and explain, this might have been what the land looked like, and this is how we use these resources. And then over time, we have 1 hectare. And our people, and my mother's people, have 85,000 tribal members, and less than 12% of our tribe lives at home. And it's not because we don't want to, it's because we've basically been dispossessed of all those lands. And so we've had to move elsewhere to live. And this is what this process is about, is trying to make those connections. And we use participatory mapping and be able to visualize it, because if you can get your community to support the initiative behind you, to back what you're saying and validate it from your elders right down to your children and to those communities, then that's the whole community that's doing it within that legal process. It's not one individual that leads it. So we had, you know, most recently in 2004, we had the Crown turn around and extinguish title from our foreshore and seabed. And 2011, we basically fought through the court process to basically get them to recognise again. But what that's meant is now we have to go for another process to define who has rights and access to your foreshore and seabed. So who can use customary rights and interests along and our practices that we've been doing forever. So now we have to go through a similar process to get access and to say, this is an area we've been using for the last 1,000 years, last 500 years, where we have burials, we do collection of seafood, and we have to basically use all these different types of techniques to validate that within a court process. And then from a court process, then look at a government process. I hope that's kind of helped Monty in terms of kind of shaping some of the issues that we face here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Kia ora, thank you.
Thank you, Moka. It's really interesting kind of how this kind of from the treaty and tribunal, and also kind of how it's used, and also yeah, I kind of heard a bit story about this in when I was I guess when I talked to you, emailed you that kind of history from my professor. So, would like to know more about it. Yeah, for those who are, have already questions, so just type in the Q&A tab, and then so we can address the question to the panelists. And last but not least, I'd like to invite Debbie Sutejo from JKPP, Jaringan Kerja Pemetaan Partisipatif. The JKPP has been kind of around for 25 years, so it's sort of quite relatively or long already for an NGO. So has been mapping a lot of lands, about 17 million, right, Debbie, the last time? So,
yeah, 17.2 million hectares.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, time is yours, Debbie. So please give it in 5 minutes. Okay.
Yes, thank you, Mas Monty, for the opportunity, and thank you for having me in this webinar. I call Mas Monty. Mas is mean brother in Japanese, so I call Mas Monty. Yeah, I think the similar question with others speaker, right, Mas Monty. So the first question is about what the historical root of the spatial disposition of IPs in Indonesia. So the explanation I will tell 50 and 60 years back to answer this question. Yeah, for me, actually, it's about the mismanagement of the rich and invaluable natural resource in Indonesia, which is supposed to be a source of wealth of Indonesian people, including IPs and local communities. Instead of IPs could be the main control of this resource, they experience dispossession, either exclusion from their forest, land, or their livelihood, or even the development project include into other form of living. Actually, I will tell a little bit more about the first, it's the beginning story when the Suharto took as a president. Maybe you are familiar with our President Suharto. He immediately, actually, in the first time, he immediately set the stage of the foreign investment and the capitalist development with the policy of the foreign investment. It's, if I'm not mistaken, it's number 1 in 1967. And but in the behind of this policy, actually, this is the new enter of the when the president is mainly accommodate the idea of foreign mining company. If you, yeah, I think it's familiar with the Papua. It's begin for exploit the gold mining in Papua, and then from this, the law has been applied in various similar and huge area contained by not only gold, but also other mine materials at the same location are inhabited of IPs itself. So, and then after that, the new government, I mean, under the Suharto regime, they continue to manage all the others natural resource, including forest area. And the second policy that I think it's important to tell about the basic forest law, number 5, because with this policy, actually, it's like empower the national government, Indonesia government, to control, manage, and administer all state forest land under control by the state forest, by the government. So all the forest is in the territory of Republic of Indonesia, including the natural resources, all controlled by the state. And then the forest map have been important tools for state authority trying to exclude or include people within the same space as forest resource. And then they are continue with the next regulation. If you remember, Mas Monty, about the HPH, the permit or the concession in the forest area. So the last that I think the policy who make destroy the IPs as a systematically. Actually, village government law number 5 in 1979, because this law is contribute very systematic and structural support for the destruction of local institution of social economic. If you remember, it's like homogenization, all divided as village without they know. They see the local system that had been exists in the local. So all as homogenization or as a village. I would like to share a little bit more the example, like last year in 2020, if you still remember Mas Monty and Indonesian people who joined with this webinar, in Kinipan IPs in Lamandu district in Central Kalimantan, this case show how their adat forest, I mean the Kinipan IPs territory, released by the Forest Ministry to oil palm industry. We call so-called PT Sawit Mandiri Lestari. The territory of the Kinipan IPs around 16,000 hectares, and almost 70% actually the primary forest. And until 2019, at least more than 3,600 hectares Kinipan forest was destroyed by the oil palm company, Sawit Mandiri Lestari. In August, when the IP's leader lead the community to protest about this palm oil company, actually the leader, Pak Effendi Buhing, Kinipan leader, was forcibly with the excessive force by police. Because and then they said the IP's leader, Pak Buhing, just thief the chainsaw and destruction company building. That the fact when the IPs protest and they have been criminalized by the government. I think this same happened in the Philippines and in others country. So I would like to say, in other words, the deeply root of and it's hard to figure out actually. In other words, there is no room for the local community or IPs, local knowledge or local initiative by them to part of development of this nation, Indonesia. That's the for me it's basically root, yeah, Mas Monty. And then if you ask about the method, yeah, it's similar with Pak Dave story about what, because we use many kind of the method based on the needed. With at the first we use the manual approach with the calculator paper, with the compass, and then we use the advanced one like delineation. We use the high resolution image map with the cartometric approach, even by drone. We trying to develop the advanced technology. Actually, this is to make appropriate the state techniques and the manner of representation to bolster the legitimacy of the customary claim to resource. Pak Dave say don't follow the require of the government, because it's so sophisticated. It's complicated problem, because it's about the policy. It is about the political. It's not about the technology. But we're trying to develop many kind of advanced technology to show that we don't have problem with the standard, with the technology. And actually the spatial geospatial information body, yeah, they said there's no problem also with our technology. That's I think that's all, Mas Monty, if I missed something.
Thank you, Dewi. I think it's very give a very good background about the kind of the struggle and also how maps are kind of used in Indonesia context. Yeah. So I think it's a bit a run of out of time, but we have kind of questions especially for Devi. 2 questions. One is from Ida Ansharani. From Mehwis Zaman. he or she, sorry if I'm want to ask a few aspects of making social maps by taking information from indigenous women. And the second one is from Cindy. She would like to has a question on what makes it different between indigenous collective rights and indigenous women's collective rights. So please, Debbie, your time is yours.
Okay, thank you, Bang Monty. I just want to try answer, but it's not really. Okay. Aspect of making a social map by taking information from indigenous women. Engendering participatory mapping is carried out by indigenous women in the community directly, because we want to use these tools to build their capacity. Yeah, but this is like a space to reflect their identity as a indigenous woman, as a woman. That's why it's important for us using this space. Social data collection uses a combination of ethnography to identify change that occur in ancestral domain areas, ancestral domain between generation. We use 3 generation. And the other one is we are using critical education for analysis of spatial function and land use, roles and power relation. And the third is we try to combine the feminist approach, oral hair story. This is like to place the experience of indigenous women as a data, such as community history recorded by indigenous women through various events that occur in various spaces. Indigenous women quite often mark an area using a traumatic event or function of the area, which can be different from the naming commonly used by their community. This is like how we can use that, take a social map. And I know after 3 years, we realize the qualitative data is not enough for the government, and we conduct the to try to collecting the quantitative data to complete the social mapping. And maybe this is like related to the other question. And we combine this qualitative and quantitative data like a census, and we put in the spatial map. Then I think this is good for us to show where is indigenous woman in the ancestral domain, and how they can manage the natural resources, and we can put our indigenous woman interest on that areas. And this is like more easier for indigenous women to talk with the other stakeholder or groups in the community. And I think this is a good for us because we are using the data to build our what you call this. This is like a roadmap for indigenous women to see the vision of the ancestral domain, what they want to. Yeah. Then we try to influence the government. We bring our vision to the village development planning in Indonesia, and then we can put all the data on that. I think this is a part of how we can use the engendering participatory mapping to as a social map. And the second is about what the different indigenous people collective rights, with the indigenous women collective rights. Indigenous women collective rights, it's built by traditional indigenous women knowledge to manage the natural resources. One is easier to look at. If you see the function of function, the space in forest area for indigenous women, they can pick up the and harvest the like fruit, like vegetables, like herbal and others. Yeah, this is not just individual. The knowledge built by collective indigenous women, like weaving behind me. This is a fermentation. If you look at the black color, this is a fermentation using the mud and the plant, the specific plant, and the knowledge is not produced by individual, but this is a collective. And that's why it's a bit different. With indigenous people, yeah, they have the collective rights, the same with indigenous women, but it's not really put indigenous women collective rights in the specifically. That's why it's important for us to bring these issues. It's a lot of indigenous women collective rights. It's a bit different with others indigenous people in common. Yeah. I think, is it enough, Bang Monty? I will back to you.
Okay, yeah, I think it's I think it's you provide a very good kind of an explanation of answering those questions. And we have another question. It's for everyone. That for the families. It's come from Walter Dupuy. The question is: do you all have particular methods or suggestions for representing non-spatial or non-feasible aspects of indigenous cultures and rights with the maps? So kind of this is kind of a bit challenging, especially technically. I'm wondering if Mocha could jump in on this, because I bet you're having these issues on kind of in mapping the kind of Maori plans. Yeah. Please do. Okay.
Do you have particular suggestions for representing non-spatial or non-visible aspects? Yeah, that is a difficult question. Difficult in the fact that how do you contextualize something that's not seen or visually, or someone? I suppose we have things called taniwha. We have places that are spiritual elements. I wouldn't be able to suggest how you could do that in a way that you could a method of representing it, other than if you were talking about trying to depict it on a map, we still would record it on the map and using different types of symbology that we've created, and then have a context or narrative behind it that defines what it is. So you still got if you're using the tribunal report, or you're suggesting with a place of doing it with an evidence, there's still quite a bit of documentation that supports whatever's been colourgraphically represented on a map. So we would still depict places, spiritual places, burial places, places where you can't go. We would normally do them in like a large polygon, for example, rather than saying specifically what is that particular place, or places that of cultural significance that we don't want people to actually see. So we would turn around and create a 1 to 50,000 scale map, for example, rather than to 1 to 5,000 scale map, or 1 to 15, because we might not want you to go there, because what happens in a lot of places is people turn up with a shovel and they start digging up some of our cultural sites and start having and putting them and selling them. So we'll normally do large scale maps, and we'll normally do large polygons to basically just show you that there's something there, and it's been endorsed by the community, and that the community as a collective have agreed to this process. So the collective process that we've depicted when we're depicting on a map is one that's been supported by the group as a part of your participatory process. And so when it's presented, or if it's showing, that's what we say as a community. We will try to fuzzy line, but if you put a line on a map, and you're talking about borders, and Dave, sure, he would talk about it, watch everyone in the room start to get quite, you're creating a border over another border. Well, borders didn't exist. Lines didn't exist before that. So as soon as you start putting lines, you're clearly delineating one has position and another doesn't. So you then start create conflict. And if it's red in our culture, red is like it refers to like blood. So it's quite significant. It's the earth. It's the Mother Earth. So when you start depicting a red line on a map, one is you're saying that person's dominant. That's the dominant area. And then if you say it's a red, that's quite significantly quite important. And then you will see everyone in the room start to become quite uncomfortable, and it changes the whole dynamic within the room. So when you're looking at cartographic representation, being quite clear on how you want to visualize it, and getting support on what those different types of icons could be. But I hope that's kind of had some support, Monty, when you're trying to visualize not physical, tangible things, but intangible things.
All right, thank you, Mocha. Others probably like to join in, Dave or Hillary, also respond to these questions about the areas that are invisible or or very culturally very important, and people don't really want to see them.
It would be good if the person who made the question can give specific examples of these areas, so that our response would be more accurate. Maybe some examples of what his of these areas, non-visible aspects of indigenous culture.
Yeah, probably something is more spiritual, kind of beings, or kind of area of sacred sites, things like that, or kind of that non, tangible cultural kind of artifacts.
I guess what Mocha said is actually fairly accurate enough. No, you don't want to represent that in a map in its specific location, but a range that covers it. So a bigger polygon representing a range where that specific sacred area has influence or has enough function, because there is no one specific area. So that is what we usually do. If it's a sacred area, you do not depict it in a single point, but create a polygon depicting the range of impact and influence of that particular area. Or even maybe saying like the people who actually assert that that area is sacred is part of that polygon. It is more accurate because it shows the range of the impact of that particular space, and at the same time you protect that area because you don't put a specific point where it is located.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Others would like to respond on this? Oh, that's kind of the question. So yes, it's it's for spiritual relationship and sacred like we are kind of discussing. So I think we really kind of running out of time. It's already kind of 15 minutes kind of after that our scheduled time. So it's a pleasure to hear all the kind of the explanations from you all, from the panelists, and I think this is a kind of, we can it's like I said, it's a forum for everybody kind of to start from learning to each other, and then having engaging in terms of trying to understanding different aspects, and also different contexts of in each country, and different challenges, different kind of opportunities, also that we can see from here and then from our discussion here. So hopefully this, with this webinar, we can, people can understand more about the issues and also the complexities also of the, mapping indigenous people's lands. So with that, I like to end this webinar. Thank you all, especially the panelists, and also thank you for all the participants who are joining us here. So please, would like, I will invite you to also to attend other ISPM webinar series in the future, next year. It would be next year. So again, thank you. So have you a very good day, very good evening, especially for Mocha, who's already late there in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So thank you all, and so with that, I like to end the webinar. Thank you again. See you next time. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, Mocha, Hilary, Mbak Devi. Bye-bye all.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, the whole participant.
We're gonna keep in on context, okay?
Okay, keep on
Yeah.
context.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night. Bye.
Yeah, good night, Muka.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon for others, and also good evening for Hillary.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Cindy. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.